Very good morning. Today we are going to discuss another very interesting topic, that is financial market. We know that financial market is one of the vital or crucial components of financial system. That is, financial system consists of four components. What are they? One is financial institutions. Second one is our topic, financial market, financial instruments, and financial services. From these four components, we will take one component, that is our topic, financial market. And we will discuss financial system in a very comprehensive way in the coming video. Let me ask a simple question. What is financial market? We know that a developed financial market is one of the prerequisites for economic development of the country. So we can simply say financial market is the place where financial instruments are traded or financial assets are traded. That is, buyers and sellers will contact with each other to buy and sell financial instruments like bonds, debentures, government securities, treasury bill, commercial paper, etc. So here we also consider the major classification of financial markets like money market and capital market. We know that money market is the market for short-term lending and borrowing, whereas capital market is the market for long-term lending and borrowing. Here there is a keyword. This classification is based on the maturity of financial assets or instruments. Those assets that up to 1 year that belong to money market. Those assets and its maturity period in excess of 1 year that will come under capital market. So we will discuss primary market, secondary market, derivative markets, future market, currency market, foreign exchange market, and equity market, bond market or debt market, etc. etc. Okay, we will discuss all these topics like meaning and definition of financial market and classification of financial market along with beautiful slides.
Yeah, we have discussed in the previous videos topics like financial assets, tangible and intangible assets, properties of financial assets, debt versus equity. Okay, in front of us there are two topics that we are going to discuss. What are the topics?
Financial markets, classification of financial markets.
Okay, well then here the question is that can you define financial market?
So I will try. Financial markets refers to a marketplace where buyers and sellers participate in the trade. It is a platform that facilitates traders to buy and sell financial instruments or securities.
Okay, what do you mean by financial instruments, or can you give some examples for financial instruments?
Bond, debenture, government securities, treasury bills, etc.
Okay, very good. Okay, that is bond, debenture, government securities, treasury bill, commercial paper. That means all these instruments are traded in the financial market. That means you can buy or sell. That is the simple meaning of financial market. And now I would like to say a financial market is a broad term describing any marketplace where buyers and sellers participate in the trade of assets such as equities, bonds, currencies, and derivatives. In other words, a financial market is a market for creation and exchange of financial assets. Please note that point. Financial assets means financial instruments that we have discussed. And financial market exists wherever financial transactions take place. That is also very important. Financial transactions. Can you say the meaning of financial transactions?
It is said to have taken place when a financial asset is created or transferred.
Yeah, that is, a financial transaction is said to have taken place when a financial asset is created or transferred. For example, government is ready to issue treasury bill for mobilizing short-term fund. That is, the creation of financial asset. What is the name of the financial asset? Treasury bill. Who actually created? Who is the debtor here? Government. And it is, issued to the public. That is, financial asset is transferred. Another example, geo industry, which created a bond or maybe debenture. That is, private company. That is debenture, or maybe shares. That is, financial asset is created and that, issued in the primary market. That is, transferred to the investors. Means, the people who are ready to invest. That means, financial asset is created and that financial asset is transferred from one person to another, or from company to another, or from one investor to another investor. That transaction or that activity will happen in a place or in a platform. That platform is known as financial market. I think you got the point.
Yeah.
Now, next topic that is, as a part of our syllabus is that classification of financial market. Different types of financial market we can see. I have discussed that point, money market, capital market, primary market, secondary market, equity market, debt market, future market, or currency market. And these types or kinds or classification of financial market, that topic is also very important. We can expect a 5 mark or even a long essay format question. Here, I will give you a keyword to understand or to distinguish the different types of financial market. That keyword is very, very important. Okay. Here, the first classification here, one is money market and second one is capital market. And the interesting thing is that this classification is based on security types and the maturity of the asset. That is very important. That is, those instruments having the maturity period of up to 1 year or less than 1 year, that come under money market. Please note that point. Maturity period means, suppose, I would like to take a loan from a bank, suppose, and its repayment period is 6 months. That means that will come under money market. If the repayment period is 5 years or 10 years, then I would like to say that will come under capital market. Okay, that is why treasury bill that come under money market. Why? We can see the treasury bill like 91 days treasury bill, 182 days treasury bill, or 364 days treasury bill. All these instruments having the maturity period up to 1 year or less than 1 year. That is why that instruments come under money market. Okay, and in the case of capital market, we can see long term maturity. That is, the settlement period is in excess of 1 year. For example, bond, debenture, or government securities. We can see government securities maybe for 10 years. That is, you will get the principal amount only at the time of maturity, that is 10 years. Some maybe 5 years. And all those instruments having the maturity period of excess of 1 year, that will come under capital market. So here, what is the keyword? The keyword, the nature of asset and its maturity period. Those assets having less than 1 year period of maturity come under money market, and those assets, financial assets having maturity period of excess of 1 year, that come under capital market. Now my question is that what is money market?
Money market is a market for dealing with financial assets and securities which have a maturity period of up to 1 year. In other words, it's a market for purely short-term funds.
Yeah, it is the market for short-term lending and borrowing. Okay. Now, the second one is capital market. It is a market for financial assets which have a long or indefinite maturity. That is, generally it deals with long-term securities which have a maturity period of above 1 year. That in a simple way, capital market deals in long-term financial assets, or simply we can say capital market is the market for long-term lending and borrowing. And capital market may be further divided into, industrial securities market, government securities market, and another popular classification you can see primary market or secondary market, that is also come under capital market. Okay, now another classification of financial markets into primary market and secondary market. The important thing is that here the classification of financial market is based on the type of securities, that is whether new one or old one that traded in the market. That is really very interesting. Primary market is the market for new issues or fresh issues that is issued by the existing company or new company, but the condition is that it is fresh or it is new securities. That is why primary market is also known as new issue market. But in the case of secondary market, it is a market for old shares. That means once issued in the primary market, then after that it will come under secondary market. And my question is that how can you define primary market?
Primary market is a market for new issues or new financial claims. Hence, it's also called new issue market. The primary market deals with those securities which are issued to the public for the first time. The primary markets are where investors have their first chance to participate in a new security issuance.
Okay, that is good. Please understand, capital market is the title of the second module and primary market is the third module and secondary market that we will discuss in the fourth module. Okay, now, secondary market is a market for secondary sale of securities. That is, in other words, securities which have already passed through the new issue market are traded in this market. Generally, such securities are quoted in the stock exchange and it provides a continuous and regular market for buying and selling of securities. That is very important. The secondary market is where investors purchase securities or assets from other investors rather than from issuing companies themselves. That means, primary market you can see a direct connection between issuing company and an investor. But in the secondary market, there is no presence of the company, issuing company, but, investors are buying and selling the existing securities or old securities in the secondary market. Okay, then another classification, a simple classification of financial markets into equity market and a debt market. Some instruments offer ownership of the company, that is shares or stocks, and some other instruments that is simply denoted as what? Creditorship securities like debenture and bond. And that based on that statement we can say equity market is a market where ownership of securities are issued and subscribed. An example of a secondary equity market for shares, Bombay Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange, etc. That is, you can simply say, what is an equity market?
The equity market, often referred to as the stock market, is a market for trading equity instruments.
Okay, we have discussed this topic elaborately in the previous video, debt versus equity. So, in the equity market, we can see the buying and selling of equity instruments like shares or stocks. Okay, these are the ownership securities. But in the case of debt market, which is the market where funds are borrowed and lent. Arrangements are made in such a way that the borrowers agree to pay the lender the original amount of the loan plus some specified amount of interest. That is very important. In the case of debt market, where the financial instruments like debenture and bonds are traded. That means buying and selling of bonds or debentures that will take place in the debt market. And the investor actually expecting or anticipating what? The return of rate of interest. But in the case of equity market, the investors actually expecting a return in the form of dividend. Then I would like to see the short form of the debt market. What is debt market?
The debt market is the market where debt instruments are traded.
Very good. Now, another...
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
You can also use Malayalam language also.
Okay, that is also better. And in the case of debt market means, കടപ്പത്രങ്ങൾ വാങ്ങുകയും വിൽക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന മാർക്കറ്റാണെന്ത് ഡെറ്റ് മാർക്കറ്റ്. ഇക്വിറ്റി മാർക്കറ്റ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പം ഓഹരികൾ, അവിടെ വാങ്ങുന്നതും വിൽക്കുന്നതും എന്താണ്, ഓണർഷിപ്പ് ഓഫ് ദ കമ്പനി. ആൻഡ് ഇക്വിറ്റി മാർക്കറ്റിൽ ഇൻവെസ്റ്റേഴ്സ് എക്സ്പെക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നത് റിട്ടേൺ എന്താണ്, ഡിവിഡൻഡ് ആണ്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എ പാർട്ട് ഓഫ് ദ പ്രോഫിറ്റ് ഓഫ് ദ കമ്പനി ദാറ്റ് വിൽ ബി ഡിസ്ട്രിബ്യൂട്ടഡ് among the investors. But in the case of debt market, the investors actually expecting what? എന്താ പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്, പലിശയാണ് അതിൻ്റെ റിട്ടേൺ ആയിട്ട് പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ക്ലാസിഫിക്കേഷൻ ഓഫ് ഫൈനാൻഷ്യൽ മാർക്കറ്റ്സിൽ നമ്മൾ ശ്രദ്ധിക്കേണ്ടത്, ഈ ഡെറ്റ് ഇൻസ്ട്രുമെൻറ്റ്സ് വാങ്ങുകയും വിൽക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന മാർക്കറ്റിനെ ഡെറ്റ് മാർക്കറ്റ് എന്നും, ഓഹരികൾ വാങ്ങുകയും വിൽക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന മാർക്കറ്റിനെ നമുക്ക് എന്തും വിളിക്കാം, ഇക്വിറ്റി മാർക്കറ്റ് എന്നും വിളിക്കാം. അപ്പോൾ അവിടുത്തെ കീവേഡ് അതാണ്, നാച്ചർ ഓഫ് അസറ്റ്സ്. Whether it belongs to ownership security, then equity market. If it belongs to creditorship security, then it belongs to debt market. I think you got the points.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Now, another classification, derivative market is a market where financial instruments are derived and traded based on an underlying asset such as commodities or stocks. A derivative is a contract, but in this case, the contract price is determined by the market price of the core asset. Okay, we will discuss elaborately in later. And next one, insurance markets. That is also very important. LIC, Life Insurance Corporation,
Yeah.
GIC, General Insurance Corporation, and like that. Here, you simply understand, insurance markets facilitate the redistribution of various risks. Okay, where insurance policies are traded. Okay, there are lots of policies are there. Now another classification, a depository market which consists of depository institutions that accept deposit from individuals and firms and uses these funds to participate in the debt market by giving loans or purchasing other debt instruments such as treasury bills. Okay, depository market, for example, a financial institution like bank which accept deposit and offer rate of interest to the depositors, and that deposit actually converted into loan to the borrowers, in which bank will charge a high rate of interest, and that type of market is there. And non-depository market carries out various functions in financial markets, ranging from financial intermediary to selling insurance, etc. The various constituencies in non-depository markets are mutual funds, insurance companies, pension funds, brokerage firms, etc. And now another classification of financial market, that is associated with the interbank market. Interbank market, which is the financial system and trading of currencies among banks and financial institutions, excluding retail investors and smaller trading parties. That means, കടം വാങ്ങുകയും കൊടുക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്നത് ആര് തമ്മിലാണ്, ബാങ്കുകൾ തമ്മിലാണ്. SBI gives loans to Punjab National Bank ആൻഡ് വൈസ് വേഴ്സ. മറ്റുള്ള രീതിയിലുള്ള കർഷകർക്കുള്ള ലോണ്, ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയൽസിനുള്ള ലോൺ, അങ്ങനത്തെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്നും ഇതിലില്ല. ഈ മാർക്കറ്റ് ഡീൽ ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഇപ്പം നമുക്കറിയാം, കോൾ മണി മാർക്കറ്റ്. ബാങ്കുകൾ പരസ്പരം കടം വാങ്ങുകയും നൽകുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു മാർക്കറ്റാണ്. ഓക്കെ, ദിസ് ഈസ് ഓൾസോ വെരി ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻറ്റ്. നെക്സ്റ്റ് financial market, kind of financial market is foreign exchange market, which is the market where currencies are traded. It is really very interesting. You can purchase dollar, you can purchase euro. If you want $1, but you should give rupees 72 or maybe less or high. ഓക്കെ, അപ്പം വ്യത്യസ്ത രാജ്യങ്ങളുടെ കറൻസീസ് വാങ്ങുകയും വിൽക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുന്ന മാർക്കറ്റിനെ വിളിക്കുന്ന പേരാണെന്ത്?
Foreign exchange market.
It is also known as forex market or currency market. Interestingly, the forex or foreign exchange market is the largest market in the world in terms of the total cash value traded, and any person, firm or country may participate in this market. Okay, these are the major classifications of financial market, and I would like to wind up the video.
So what is the next video?
Okay, in the next video, I would like to discuss the topic like financial system and economic development, or simply we can say what are the major role of financial system in the socio-economic development of the country. Okay, we will discuss that thing, and my humble request is that you must refer to my book, that is Economics of Capital Market, published by Calicut University Central Cooperative Store, and you also visit to my website Naushad Chengodan, and don't forget to subscribe my YouTube channel Naushad Chengodan, and must watch the previous videos and share the videos and comment the videos, and wish you all the very best, and stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.